Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Marketer Live. We are so happy to have all of y'all here, as well as Jonathan, who's the EVP over at Complex, but has an amazing long career in marketing at media organizations. And in the pre-show, don't worry, we'll talk about it in this part of the show too. We were already talking about how much has changed in media, over the course of his career. So we'll dive into that. Before we do, though, a couple notes for everybody. One, you can ask questions whenever you want, absolutely anytime. We'll just kind of answer them as they roll through, and I'll also remind people as folks continue to join. And then also another just huge thank you to the Webby Awards, who are the sponsor for Marketer Live. We are trying to figure out, what does the future of work look like, in particular for marketers and creatives. So far, the answer has been, we're all going to figure it out together, which is a big part of what this webinar series is about. But Jonathan, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, excited to be here. Let's do this.
Let's do it. Okay, first question. It's the same question I lob at everybody. When you first joined Complex, what did the marketing org chart or the marketing org look like?
Yeah, we're actually kind of talking a little bit about this before we even started this. I feel like marketing means so many different things at so many different media companies. Some media companies, it's really more sort of part of the sales organization, and others, it's basically the same term for audience development, and some it's strictly paid media. And so, Complex Networks is no different in that marketing meant something different and still means something different than any marketing organization that I've led, be it at VICE or Vox Media or National Geographic. But, it was very splintered, but not too different from what it looks like today. Whenever I joined, a big goal of ours was basically to take all the parts of the organization that were effectively responsible for developing and executing multi-channel marketing programs that help our brands or our products or our services or our key editorial franchises really reach the largest B2C or B2B audience possible in an effort to drive some kind of goal. So the goal could be anything from awareness, right? But all the way down to taking action like visiting a website or watching a video to generate a pre-roll, or to attend an event in Long Beach, or to become a lifetime fan that comes back and buys more and more products over time. And so, within the company now, marketing is comprised of 4 different teams, one being business intelligence. So that being the qual and the quant, market research, SEO. We launched a division called Complex Collective within business intelligence. That is our panel, about 30,000 young, diverse audiences that respond to surveys from us that then inform everything from a next big product we're going to launch, but also helps inform our clients too. It comprises marketing strategy. So really the team that is pulling the rest of the marketing our marketing team together to develop go-to-market programs that help new products launch and reach those audiences in a really targeted way. It includes PR, so really focus on corporate as well as B2C communications, internal communications as well, and then audience development and paid media, which is really the execution of that marketing strategy. So everything from email to Facebook page, Instagram page, push notifications, to overlays, to display ad, like really everything, all the tactics basically to be able to execute on that strategy, that vision to reach that target audience. And so it's definitely transformed a little bit, but it hasn't really been too much of an overhaul. It's more been a refinement of the overall team structure and strategy.
Yeah, so that's a lot of stuff. How big is the marketing team?
You're right, it's a lot of stuff. This team is actually kind of scrappy, I think, relative to a lot of marketing organizations. So we are about, I would say, 20-ish people right now spread across those 4 teams. Obviously it's not evenly weighted across each of those teams. It really depends on the role that the team plays within the organization, whether they are a service org or a leadership org or a hybrid of both, and really the needs, across the organization for those independent teams. So, at previous organizations, it's been a lot larger, and some it's been a lot smaller, but I think we're at a pretty healthy size right now, but given everything that we're working on this year, definitely a lot of room to grow.
Yeah, well, so you talked about the refinement since you've gotten there. Can you talk to me a little bit about when you joined, who did you hire first? What roles were you going out to look to hire? How did you begin doing that refinement to get it to the point where it's at today?
Yeah, so a couple of sort of responsibilities are I think top of the list. One being the marketing strategy team. We have effectively 5 different brands within the organization, but lots of different products, be it our physical event Complex Con or our virtual event Complex Land. We have e-com, we have an application that's basically the kayak for sneakers, so you can price it. So all these things that make up the constellation of complex networks. And at the time, the marketing strategy team was, basically 1 to 2 people, sort of trying to service all these different needs across the organization. Priority number 1 was really starting to hire more for that division so that we could actually do more and cover more ground. Candidly, there's still a lot more room for us to grow there. And I think a lot more for us to expand in terms of capabilities, but that's one area that's been a priority. Another being PR as well. We have a really effective PR team, and we saw an opportunity to expand that into corporate communications to do more on that front, to be able to really continue to champion the narrative of complex networks for B2B audiences, places where a lot of our maybe direct competitors had more of a presence and had more of a strategy or more resources against. Sort of making sure that we were really tactical and proactive on that front as well. And so those are 2 areas. Since then, we've definitely hired more across the marketing organization, especially in the BI team, especially in the paid media team. But those were, I would say 2 of the top priorities first coming in. One was really to sort of ensure that we were able to service more of the organization and do more. And the other was to really help us sort of fortify our leadership position on a B2B level for everything that we spent the last 20 years really investing in and championing, but also to get credit where credit was due and to start to sort of set ourselves apart from maybe the Vices or the Voxes or Group 9s of the world.
Right. Well, so you said something in all of that I think resonates with a lot of marketing leaders and marketers in general, which is, I think you said exactly, frankly, we could be doing more, which I think is true across like every marketing org, right? Marketing leaders feel like, with more budget, with more resources, with more whatever, we could execute faster, we could do more. For you, when you're thinking about, hiring on resources to the team or prioritizing projects, whatever that might look like, how do you think through, full-time hires, freelancers, agencies to kind of build out what that strategy looks like and how you're going to get things across the line?
You're right. Resources always seem to be the big variable that everyone's trying to solve for, because you sort of see the opportunity, but you can't really realize the opportunity as well as you'd like to. And so, every team, marketing aside, I think struggles with this. We would love to be able to do more. But as it relates to marketing, I think it's really 3 considerations. One being, is this an initiative or a project that has a shelf life, or is it something that as a company, we are making a long-term commitment to or an investment in and has this always on need? In which case, if it's the former, it's definitely more freelance focused. If it's the latter, it's more of a full-time hire. Is this a role or a function that's established, or is it something that's really nascent? There's certain teams within the marketing organization that have been part of the company, whether formally or informally, for a really long time. And there are ones that we have launched even over the last, I would say 10 months. And in those scenarios, we probably aren't hiring full-time roles for it until we're able to really prove out the effectiveness of that team or that function. And when I say effectiveness, I mean not just revenue, but also brand impact too. So those are 2 considerations. And then finally, at the end of the day, it always comes down to budget, right? Can I actually afford to hire this person on full time, or does it need to be a freelancer to start? And then hopefully we can convert that freelancer as we start to prove out the value of that role.
Right. Well, it sounded like you mentioned earlier that you have some quant folks. So it sounds like you guys are able to do some good measurement to see what's working, which is very helpful for getting approval.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Question though. So it sounds like you have kind of hired internally for the marketing strategy piece of it, which is that long-term vision. Can you talk me through how to even tell what a short-term marketing project might be versus that longer term?
Yeah, of course. So there are longer term goals that we set, whether they are improving brand awareness for complex networks, the corporate brand, because we feel like that might increase engagement with or preference for our sales capabilities, our products, our ability to partner with sponsors, work with larger distributors, essentially hire on more great talent. So that's one of those like always on strategies that we continue to just sort of focus on and invest in and scale over time. But then there are shorter term projects, ones that, for example, we did a program last year called Pull Up and Vote that was focused on, as the name implies, encouraging folks to get off the fence and actually turn up to vote, because statistically, millennials for the first time ever were the largest demographic to turn out to the 2018 midterms. And if you look at the data even further, a large demographic within those millennial demographics were BIPOC audiences that were actually turning out even more so than they had in 2016 or before that in 2014 for those midterms. And so those two insights that informed our strategy for how we effectively reach those audiences, communicate to them, convince them that it's not a choice, it's an obligation to actually turn out and vote or pull up and vote. But the voting cycle only lasts X many days and the campaigning cycle only lasts X many months. And so that's a short-term program right there that we aren't currently supporting right now, but imagine we will be for the midterms coming up pretty soon as well.
We talked a little bit about budget and how you kind of think through that with trying to resource. Let's talk a little bit about bandwidth, right? You have about 20 people doing a lot of different marketing activities. What are some kind of red flags to you as a manager, someone who hires and, oversees a team? Like what are some red flags that folks are hitting that bandwidth mark? And what do you do to kind of help address that?
Yeah, I mean, one, I think is like maybe more of an implicit red flag is like you start to see emails come in at midnight or on the weekend, which to me is like, okay, people aren't able to really find the time to sort of keep up or to do their work during the daytime. And so they're kind of cannibalizing personal time to be able to do that. I think the whole remote work pandemic situation everyone's in right now has further complicated being able to understand whether that is just because there is this kind of like expectation or perceived expectation to do that, or if it's really even more augmented than before. I think it's more the latter. So that's like one, I think, tall tale sign of like burnout. I think one other one is just like shifting deadlines. Like if deadlines continue to shift and shift and shift, and there's not really good reason other than I'm not able to do it. That to me, again, it's like a bandwidth constraint. A lot of people, myself included, have felt like we have to take on more, we have to do more. It's really impeded people's ability to sort of focus on priority number one and to be able to be intentional about how they bring new things to market or how they invest themselves or their budgets into the things that are actually going to push the needle for the company. And so whenever you try to do too many things, ultimately none of them are going to be A pluses. They're all going to be B minuses or C pluses, and there'll be some A pluses here and there, but nothing will be what you want it to be. And so, those are two, I think, like symptoms. I can't say that I figured out like the silver bullet to like fix it all, but if I ever do, I'll share it with this group.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're trying, and I like that and admire it.
Thanks.
Well, so, as you were thinking about hiring marketers in general, we all know this to be true, especially as marketers, there's like no way, or at least like no standardized way to test for marketing know-how, for marketing skills, for marketing expertise. How do you, when you're interviewing folks, maybe even in particular for you more senior marketers, like what are you looking for? What interview questions are you running through? What are red flags? Can you talk us through your mindset there?
Yeah, aside from like why the company, like why are you choosing to reach out to me? I tend to focus on passion-oriented questions. And what I mean by that is like, marketing can be a job or marketing can be part of you, something that you can't turn off, like this sort of kinetic energy that like pushes you and propels you forward. And so I'm always trying to hire for that person as opposed to a person that just like wants to be employed. Like everyone wants to be employed, but if you are in marketing, you love what you do, it's something that you wake up thinking about, like you can't shut off, you live and breathe it. Obviously that means you're going to actually show up to work. So questions like, tell me what got you interested in paid media or SEO, like in the first place. How do you personally keep up with the latest changes or trends within your industry? What's an opportunity that you see for someone like yourself within complex networks? Like what can you add from your perspective to something that maybe you perceive as being missing right now? And so those are the types of questions that I try to ask and tend to ask. So I definitely, trying to find someone that, it doesn't always have to be a culture fit, but can be a culture add to the organization or to the overall company. And so that's where I tend to go whenever I'm, interviewing for a new role.
Yeah. Again, because you've been in marketing roles at media companies in particular for a long time, which is like its own like niche of marketing to an extent. How has, hiring at past organizations helped inform hiring now?
You learn so much in terms of mishires or the right hires. And obviously you try to sort of optimize for making more and more of the right hires. And I think early on, I was trying to hire for folks that I thought would be at the company for the long haul. And I think sometimes maybe a bit risk averse to folks that maybe felt like they weren't going to stick around for too long, but were really good, right? I was trying to be comfortable and sort of prudent in my decision-making process. But then, I started to actually bring on more folks that weren't necessarily culture fits, but felt like culture adds, like didn't fit the mold. Maybe I was a little unsure of, but had qualities that maybe I hadn't thought about and we were missing, but I thought I could maybe take our team and our company to a whole different level. And so after I started to hire more folks like that, then I started to actually seek out those qualities as opposed to people that felt comfortable, that were still good, but maybe, felt like we're going to be there for a really long time, which obviously is important, but at the same time, maybe sort of limits the pool of talent that you can fish from.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, like places like Complex Networks or even Vice, where you had worked before, are publications where it's really important that the organization be able to tap into youth culture,
Right.
or variety of like culture in general. How
Yeah.
do you hire marketers, or how do you hire marketers that can do that really well? What are you looking for there?
Yeah, I think it's sort of like a good follow on to like what I was just saying too. I think there's this sort of like this fallacy that like, okay, if I work at Vice, like I just need to hire like people that I'm reaching, right? Like they have like face tattoos and they're like 18 years old and they don't have side parts or like whatever, like, the qualification is, which, I think like helps maybe if you're hiring for like the content team, right? But like for the marketing team, that isn't necessarily a requisite. And in some cases, that just means you're only going to be continued to focus on what you know, and you won't ever get outside your comfort zone. Typically, I think just continue to get outside your comfort zone and continuing to just try to find, again, people that are maybe culture adds than culture fits, is something that, I personally have just tried to continue to get better at. And it's something that at Complex Networks, at least, we're always thinking about too.
So let's go back to that question I alluded to at the very beginning, which is marketing and media in particular seems like it must have changed a ton over the last decade. Can you talk a little bit about that? What it was like when you kind of first started your career and the way org charts were structured then versus what media companies like Complex Networks are doing now?
I was really fortunate in that whenever I first really started to get into like marketing, because before I was actually running marketing departments, I was more on the ad ops side and working in that field, which I think was a great primer for what I was doing after that. But, whenever I was at Vice, building out the marketing department there, it really was just, it wasn't a marketing department, right? The ask was to build it from the ground up and sort of take pieces of the organization that existed that did what marketing should do, but were informally parts of other parts of the organization. And so at the time, it was someone that was kind of just like posting random sports scores to Twitter, and someone that was just like sending out press releases to like 1,000 blogs that would never respond. It was like all over the shop. The goal there was really to sort of build up the social team, help build up the PR team along with our PR head, really start to negotiate organic partnerships with other third-party platforms, other publishers, so that we could actually syndicate more content that we were creating, but maybe didn't have the owned and operated scale to get viewership around at that time. And then traffic building on site too, which involved SEO, building out third-party syndication partnerships as well to drive referral traffic. So, like as I list off these things, it makes me remember that what I'm describing for Vice is completely different than what we're doing now at Complex Networks.
Right.
And at Vox Media, marketing there was really focused on marketing strategy and PR, and that's it. It did not include business intelligence. It included very little paid, and that was more of a flat part of the organization. I think marketing in general, Like it's never going to be like a pretty kind of like box thing that you can lift up and pick up and put out another company. It's always going to have to fit the needs of the organization that you're in at that time. So, the needs of the organization and complex networks are very much focused on how the marketing structure is sort of built here.
Okay, Jonathan, I mean, I have, this is my last question for you again to audience folks. If y'all have questions in particular, feel free to send them in. But I mean, on my end, like you've been in this industry for a long time. Like why? What gets you up in the morning? What gets you excited about leading marketing teams, building marketing teams, doing marketing work for media organizations?
I mean, I love the idea that you can create a strategy that can help introduce people to new ideas, new products, new brands, new ways of thinking that they hadn't thought about before. You can be extremely intentional about it. I mean, in fact, you can know so much about someone and their propensity to love something that you have to offer to them, but they don't know about it yet. And marketing can help connect those dots. Like that gets me excited. Just, just sort of like the proliferation and transfer of ideas, whether that idea is a piece of content or an event or a TV show. That's the sort of role that marketing plays. I love the creativity. I love the strategy. I love that it's both left brain and right brain. It's not just like pure quant, but there's also a lot of like true creativity that goes into just getting people excited about something that maybe they hadn't been excited about previously. And so, while it's not necessarily very prescriptive or very like specific, like it's just the general idea of what marketing can help a company accomplish, like is what has always sort of propelled me to new organizations. But, most recently, and, I think one of the highlights of my career, complex networks.
I mean, Complex is cool. We had so many people so stoked about this session in particular. Yeah, it's one of our highest like subscribed ones. Like people were like, Complex, what? People loved it. It is very, very cool. Jonathan, where can people find you?
Okay, so if you're talking about you as the company, complex.com, complexnetworks.com, @complex on IG. If you want to find me, I'm in like Borum Hill, Brooklyn right now. I'm on Twitter at Jonathan_H. I'm more of like a lurker on Instagram, so I don't really have an Instagram account, but I do. It's actually just private and hasn't been updated in a really long time. I'm on LinkedIn as well. There's another Jonathan Hunt. He's a correspondent at Fox News. That's not the one you want to connect with. You want to connect with the Complex Networks, Jonathan Hunt.
Does he spell it the same way?
The same way, but he's British. So that's like other key differentiator.
Okay, yeah, that one's pretty big. Awesome. Yeah. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much. We're gonna, wrap all this up and get it out to demand or on demand for everybody. So we're so grateful to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much.